In this video, I'm going to show you how to make this pretty cool looking spinning effect that you can use in your next product commercial. Let's go. Today we're filming in what appears to be the first stages of the studio. It is a bit of a mess. We still need to paint it, but I haven't been able to because I've had to do some client projects in here. Regardless, I'm extremely excited for what this is going to become, so stay tuned for that, and the best way for you to do that is to subscribe to the channel. Now, this effect is actually pretty straightforward. In fact, it only really needs one shot. So the only shot that we need is a top shot, and that is for all the products that we want to include in our video. Before you start though, it is a really good idea to think about how you want the video to end up. In this case, I wanted this product to be duplicated 4 times and then spin around and then have the box come up. To do this, we're going to use the Elgato Master Mount L. This thing right here is hacks. I talked about it on my Instagram, which you should follow by the way if you don't already, but basically forget your C-stand. When it comes to top shots, you can literally just set this up like this. It clamps onto your table like a monitor mount. With a C-stand, you need to have enough space for a counterweight. And in the condition that I'm in right now, where I only have very limited space, it's not very practical. There's obviously going to be a weight limit, but for what I'm using, the Sony a7 III with a 35 1.8 lens, it works out pretty well. So the most important part for this first shot is that it is well lit. You can see here that I have 2 different lights. This causes 2 shadows on the product. You can obviously do this with a single light source, which will cause 1 shadow, which is what I actually used in the example. So what we're going to be doing is taking a photo of this product as it looks right here. If you're having this issue that I'm having right now where the product keeps turning, then all you have to do is get a piece of paper, fold it a few times, put it underneath it, and it works like a treat. Make sure you're shooting in RAW to get the most dynamic range out of the camera. Your settings don't really matter. What I would recommend though is that you choose an aperture above 2.8 so that you get everything in focus for your product. So the first thing we need to do is bring our images into Lightroom or Photoshop. Nothing crazy here, just some basic exposure adjustments. Unfortunately, these boxes arrived a little bit damaged. So using the clone stamp tool, I just fixed some of the dents. And then this corner here, I just pushed up using the smudge tool in Photoshop. And that just cleans it up a little bit. Now we can open up Adobe After Effects. So the first thing we're gonna do is create a white solid by right-clicking in the space, new solid, and we make it white. Then we bring the products into the project panel, and I'm firstly going to drag in the shot of the bomb. And as you can see, the product isn't blending very well with the background, but no problem, we're going to fix that. The first thing we're going to do is mask out the product around it. And once we do that, we can press M on our keyboard or go to the mask in that layer, and you can add some feather. We can start with 100 and then work our way from there. Once you do add your feather though, make sure that there are no visible edges. So you might have to move the mask a little bit in or reduce the amount of feather, and having to just adjust it a little bit more so that it will properly blend in with the background. Some shadows is good. You want it to be realistic. So next thing we're going to do is prepare our images so that then we can animate them. So as per my plan, I want 4 copies of this bomb product. And what we first are going to do is actually move the bomb product to this point around here. I usually get my tile action safe guides from here, and then Control R for my rulers, and then bring the rulers in so that I have the exact middle. When you're resizing it, make sure that you're holding shift at the same time to make sure that this doesn't happen and you get a really fat looking product. So now that I have my product in its position, I am going to get this tool here, which is actually the anchor point tool. So if I click on it, I can drag this anchor point to the middle of the frame. Now we do Control D to copy, hit R for rotation, and where it says 0 degrees, we write by how much we want the product to spin. Since I want 4 copies, I take 360 degrees and then divide it by 4, which is 90. Now what we're gonna do is actually take all of these bomb shots, right click, do pre-compose, and do bomb. Now we're gonna be adding the boxes. So as per my plan, I wanted this box to appear on this top right corner. So we're gonna actually put this shot right here. Then we're gonna get the anchor point tool. We're going to put it right in the center. Before we do the duplication, we're actually going to move it 45 degrees. So since this is rotated 45 degrees, if you want to duplicate it, R for rotation, we do 45 degrees plus 90. And that takes us over here. And it's the same thing, duplicate plus 90. Great, now we have the boxes duplicated around the product. And as we want this top shot to go into the side shot, we're gonna do the same thing. And there we have it. We have the two boxes as we want them. Now, before we move on, let's get this box here and let's make it disappear. So the first thing we need to do is reset the anchor point of these boxes from the middle of the frame to the middle of the box, because what they're going to do is actually shrink. And we need to tell After Effects from what reference they're going to shrink from. So if the anchor point was here, they will shrink from there. Whereas if it's in the middle, it will shrink from there. Am I making sense here? I think I am. So what we do is we get the anchor point tool and we move this point right to the middle there. And we just repeat that for all the other products. Next, we're going to select all of these boxes and we're going to hit S on the keyboard, which brings up the scale. And around 2 seconds is where I want the scale to be at its maximum. So we click the stopwatch. Then we move back 10 frames using the page up key. And then we set the scale to 0. And from there, the scale will go up just like so. But I want to do like a bit of a bounce effect. So what I'm going to do is about 5 frames in, I'm going to make the scale about 5 pixels higher than what it is. So look, something like this. Boom. And then what I do is I select all of these keyframes, right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease. So now I'm going to click on this last keyframe, go a little bit further down, then do Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V to paste the keyframe right there. And then the same thing for all of these. And I'm gonna go about 5 frames forward and then select them all and make the scale 0. So around here, they're just gonna go down to 0. As they get to this size here, I want the longer box to come up. So I'm going to go up to these guys. I'm gonna turn them on, hit S on their keyboard, click the stopwatch and move these frames a little bit ahead and then make these ones 0. So as you can see, they're gonna go down and then up. And then we're gonna select all of these, right click, easy ease. Now with any good animation, there is always one thing that's missing that takes you from amateur to something like a pro level, and that is motion blur. So what we're gonna do is we're going to select all of these and we're going to hit this switch that says motion blur and make sure that this is also enabled. If you don't see these switches, just go to the bottom here where it says toggle switches and modes. So far our animation looks like this. They pop up and they swap. Excellent. And now what we do is we select all of these boxes, right click, pre-compose, and just call them boxes. So now we have a composition with the boxes and one with the actual product, whatever your product is. Now this is the fun part. According to my plan, what we want to happen is that the products are spinning and then they slow down but continue spinning. So now what we're gonna do is go to the first frame, I'll right click, new adjustment layer. And then before we do anything, we're going to select our boxes and our bomb, and we're gonna click and drag this parent pick whip to the adjustment layer. And now if we click the adjustment layer and hit R on our keyboard for rotation and we move the rotation, you see that this rotates, which is great. This is exactly what we want. So what we're gonna do is hit our stopwatch at 0, and then we're gonna move this to the right because that is going to be our final location. Then we're going to take our rotation, and on the left side is how many single full rotations have happened. And on the right side is the angle. So as you can see, we do a little bit of an angle, it's just an angle. But if we do a full rotation of 360 degrees, you get a 1 next to it. So what we're gonna do is do -1, which will mean that we would be doing 1 whole spin beforehand as we come into our final position, which looks like this, as you can see. And it doesn't look too exciting, and there's a couple of things that we're gonna do to change it. But before we do so, we must remember that after this point here, according to my plan, I wanted the bottles to continue rotating. So what I'm gonna do is go further down and do another +1. So it looks like this. Well, I might have to move it a little bit down so that it's not too much. Just like that. This is the creative part of the process where you can pretty much mess around with how you want the looks to go. So let's make it more fun. Right click on the first keyframe and do easy ease out. So on the second point, do right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease in. And then we can leave the final one linear. After that, what we're gonna do is to make it a little bit more exciting is we're going to click on the graph editor and click on rotation. Now, when I first started using After Effects and I used a graph editor, I had a panic attack because it was like so much going on. And it is a little bit complicated, but I'm gonna make it really straightforward. Just follow what I do and then try and experiment here and there with some tweaks. After some time, you get the hang of it. You see that what's happening with the speed is that it's actually being very slow, and then it's coming to a straight line and then slowing down, which is great. Like, it looks okay, you know? But I kind of wanted it to start really fast because for the shot that I'm doing, it's going to transition into it. So I'm actually going to move this one to the left, and I'm going to move this one up so that it starts really fast. So now it takes 5 frames to get to minus 200 degrees, whereas before it took 10 frames. You can see that it starts off a little bit faster. So now what we're going to do is we're going to check here where it says motion blur on the adjustment layer, and then check motion blur on both the boxes and the bomb. And as a result, you can see we get some really nice motion blur from here. The only issue that we have right now is that there's a bit of a jitter where it goes really fast, and then it kind of just like stops, then it carries on moving. So we're just gonna play around with this. Ideally, you wanna have like a linear progression up to here. And there you have it. That's pretty much the effect. Now we could get very crazy and add multiple spins, for example, where the products go from square to the vertical ones. And so it looks something like that. I guess we can probably speed it up a little bit. Just like that. And then what you would do is the same thing. You go into your graph editor and then you kind of change the curve so that it goes really fast to really slow and carries on. With that being said, that is the end of the tutorial. If you liked it and it brought you some value, make sure to leave it a like and watch it down there. If you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel and ask me any questions down below. I'll try to answer as many as I can. With that being said, I'll see you in the next video.